Mac, have you ever taken a look at your Instagram Reels, TikTok, suggestions, or YouTube recommendations, and then say to yourself, how did I get here?
No. I usually understand how I get from point A to point B. Sometimes I'm more disappointed than other times,
Like
but I
disappointed in
usually
yourself?
yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Usually I understand how I got there or why something popped up. I'll be like, ah, I gotta stop going down that rabbit hole.
So I know, say if it's for TikTok or for Instagram, I know how I got there because that's my phone.
Yeah.
But if it's my YouTube, because I have that attached to like all of my televisions. So
hmm
anything that my son watches, my wife watches, it all just gets shoved into my accounts to the point of when I'm looking at YouTube now, I sometimes see videos of like why I hate podcasts. And I'm like, who in my household hates
It's
podcasts? Is
all
it
Rafi
me?
can type.
Am I self-loathing?
There is, you know, I never bought into the whole conspiracy of like covering up your camera on your laptop and yada yada, or like phones are listening to you. But I would say more so over the last, although like your internet habits just I think dime you out and Facebook dimes you out and whatnot. I'd say over the last since the pandemic, really, I feel like I'm more seen with targeted stuff. You know what I mean? Like I feel like they're fucking the targeted ads and the targeted videos have me to a T. It's like suggested videos. Oh, yes, I would like that actually.
The videos is usually me clicking through stuff. If it's a targeted ad, it's just from them listening to me and they know what I'm thinking sometimes to the point of like I get this targeted ad of something that I didn't know that I want and I see it and I immediately want it.
I love to how the same targeted ad will stay there until you click on it. You'll get the same one for like
Yep.
2 weeks and then finally you click on it and it goes away.
But then you just get more. It's like
Yeah.
when you unsubscribe to an email,
Ugh.
they actually want you to do that so that they know that you're a real person and then they shoot more at you.
I have unsubscribed and marked so many emails as spam over the last 4 or 5 years of my life. I have probably spent more time than I'd like to admit unsubscribing and marking emails as spam.
One goo, three, yeah! Goo! Jaws 3! Goo! King of Queens! Goo! Meryl Streep! Goo! Entertainment!
I'm Goo.
And I'm Mac.
And we are the Mac and Goo program. We bring you friendship.
Yeah, and today we're bringing you 90s style friendship, I guess for lack of a better term.
Hyper colored. Slap it. No, slap it's not a
Starter
thing. Skip
jackets.
it. Liz Franklin.
Slap bracelets.
There we go.
If you are a follower here at the program, you'll realize we did top 20 movie villains of the 2000s a week or two ago. And we said, you know what? We had so much fun doing that. Let's do another decade. So today,
Well, that was 2 weeks ago. We
yeah,
did 2 news dumps last week, and I said to Mac, or I said to myself at least, don't do 3 dumps in a row.
well, sometimes duty calls, you know.
Yeah.
Today we've got Mac and Goo's top 20 movie villains of the 1990s. Now, Goo, I know I explained it for the people in the last time we did this. The 90s ran from 1990 to 1999. So 89 don't count, 2000 don't count. It's
Yep.
90,
Oh,
91,
no.
92.
We get it. We get it.
Some people don't count the zero, the 1990, you know, which is
Right.
dumb. It's horseshit. It's dumb.
No, I get it. But once you give the parameters of like, here's 90 and here's 99,
Yeah.
you don't need to fill in the rest.
Yeah, and that's really the only rule we have for this. And this is movies, again, not television. There's a plethora of television villains that deserve mention for another day. Goo and I didn't have too much. Well, we had crossover on this list, but not as much as the 2000s. And oddly, Goo, I felt like there was way more eligible candidates for this list than the 2000s.
You know what's odd too is that I gave a list of 51. You gave a list of 32.
31.
And whatever you gave. And It's very odd that even with our lack of crossover, say after 10, our top 20 is pretty dead on.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I've just skimmed it real quick here.
Yeah.
And if you don't know how we come up with these lists, very simple. It's we used to do top tens. Maybe we're turned into a top 20 podcast for, perpetually. When we did the top tens, we would each make a list of 15, cross it over, do some math. Now with these top 20s, we were gonna do 25. For some reason, Goo did 31 a couple weeks ago, so now I did 31 this week. And Goo, tell the folks how many you listed this week.
51. I just said that.
51. 51 villains, which seems in excess for a top 20.
Goo loves the 90s.
So basically, if someone was high on both of our lists, they're going to be on this list. There's not many that we didn't both have. There's a few on here. I think that we had one. You might have had one or two high that I didn't have, and vice versa. But overall, we had most of these in our top 31.
So without further ado, Mac, let's get to our top 20 movie villains of the 1990s. Goo Goo Power Rankings. These are Mac and Goo's Power Rankings. Good chance that is from now on our theme song, because I learned today we're not supposed to have licensed music on this show.
Not even 6 seconds worth?
No.
Isn't there a time limit you can use?
No. Nope.
Come on.
0 is the amount.
Who gave you that rule?
Let's just say I took a training course.
Okay. So, how come radio stations can use music?
You can use it on the air. We can explain it later to each other. I'm not doing
Okay.
this over here. There's a lot. There's
All
a lot.
right. You got educated, and now we'll just have to parody the original song then.
So it'll just be us singing songs / me going back onto YouTube looking for royalty-free music.
Sure. All right. Okay. Why not?
Which is half of our stuff anyway. So
yeah, true.
True. Whatever. Hey, Mac, at number 20 for the top 20 movie villains of the 1990s, we have Howard Payne from Speed. Dennis Hopper, you had him at 11. I had him all the way down at, I think, like 48.
Yeah, that seems way too low, Goo. I think Dennis Hopper is low-key the MVP villain of the 1990s. Now,
yeah, I like Dennis Hopper. Don't get me wrong. I don't love him in Speed.
He's great in Speed. So he's got 4 nominees you could consider for this list, Goo. Speed, of course, on here. Super Mario, he plays Bowser, which is probably the worst one. True Romance, you could have considered. And Goo, I considered putting this movie and him number 1 on this list. Waterworld, Deacon in Waterworld.
Why didn't you?
I really should have.
This is our list.
That would
Put
have been
your
real
stamp
nice.
on it sometimes.
But this reminds me of Hugo Weaving in the 2000s. He wasn't near the top of our list, but he had a high volume. And yes, he is playing generally a similar character every time. But Dennis Hopper is great at being a son of a bitch.
Let's move on to number 19, and that is Max Cady from Cape Fear, played by Bobby D. Just an unkempt, crazy psychopath Bobby D. It's so good, but the issue is that The Simpsons parodied it so well that it really took the piss out of it.
Yeah, 2 things. That's a good point. Second thing, I think this being a remake knocks it down a little bit. He's great in the role. He's phenomenal, but it's not completely his. You know what I mean? So he's I don't know if he's iconic. He's just short of that. He's definitely memorable. I'm glad he's on the list, but I didn't have him particularly high.
Sideshow Bob. Let's go on to number 18, one of my top comedic villains of the decade, and that is Ernie McCracken from Kingpin, Bill Murray. I'm surprised that you didn't have him on your list, because he's so good at being that just smarmy asshole.
Go, hand up. This one's on me.
Okay.
I should have had this on my list. This is the one that, looking over things, I had already moved some things around. I didn't feel like renumbering things. He is fucking phenomenal. He's probably
so good in this.
He would have landed in my top 15 for sure. We're so used now to Bill Murray playing like a lovable character that we forget he was actually great at being a self-righteous asshole. And multiple times. Him as Ernie McCracken in Kingpin is an all-timer.
Let's go on to, we've got a 3-way tie at 15.
Ooh, a little threesome.
So these next 3 are all tied. Don't worry about that.
Trio.
We have Ivan Kornishov from Air Force One, Gary Oldman, who is just this, slow talking Russian terrorist.
Yep.
It's Gary Oldman. He's gonna
Yeah,
nail this
that's
every
really
single
what it is.
time.
The
Yes.
character itself isn't too great. Gary Oldman is just so fucking good. He is somewhat forgettable because it is a character we've seen 1,000 times, but Air Force One is great. Gary Oldman's great in it.
Cyrus the Virus Grissom from Con Air, John Malkovich.
I feel like he is more memorable than Oldman is in Air Force One,
Mhm.
but it's also John Malkovich is John Malkovich. It's hard to not see John Malkovich when he's
But
playing a
also,
character.
everyone in Con Air is just a little bit over the top.
Yeah, for sure. But
They're all just trying to match each other.
That's so true. Con Air, everyone talks about Face Off. Con Air and The Rock are significantly better than Face Off, and I think don't get their due justice when people are talking about like Nick Cage and cable movies. Those two are way better.
And also tied at 15 is Sheriff Nottingham from Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, Alan Rickman.
Sheriff of Nottingham, Goof.
Whatever. Sheriff
Don't
of
fuck
Nottingham.
that up.
Mhm.
I haven't seen this movie, Goo, mostly because Kevin Costner. I got a Kevin Costner thing. I'm sure Alan Rickman's phenomenal in it.
He's so good in this. And it's just him being constantly jealous of Robin Hood and the praise that Robin Hood gets. And just picture Alan Rickman dealing with that.
Yeah.
With the normal Alan Rickman temperament.
Right.
Yes. Let's go to number 14. This was the highest on my list that you did not have.
Mhm.
And that is Amon Goth from Schindler's List, 1993, played by Ralph Fiennes.
Ray Fiennes, Ralph Fiennes. Say it however you want to say. It's not that he's not great in this role. It's just he plays it like every other Nazi's ever been played. And I think that's to compare it to who we had number one in the 2000s, Christoph Waltz from Inglourious Bastards. That's a new take on a Nazi.
No, and I know. And Waltz
officer.
has a bigger joy to what he's doing.
Yeah.
But Fiennes in this also has this quiet joy, and he loves what he's doing, and that's what makes it so sick.
I hear you. He's great. He's great. I think though, in a decade where you listed 51, he doesn't make my list, and he didn't make my list. He would have had a better chance in the 2000s where we had a little bit less of a candidacy.
Let's go on to number 13, and it is Agent Smith, back-to-back lists.
Yeah,
2000s, also the 90s.
Just snuck in there. 1999's The Matrix. Hugo Weaving is awesome as Agent Smith. Everyone saw The Matrix when it came out, whether you were 8, 30, 80, whatever it was. Everyone went and saw that movie. And Agent Smith, other than the idea and the concept of The Matrix, Agent Smith is the most memorable character from those first two movies.
I know Kung Fu.
Easily. So I think he doesn't get enough credit. And both lists here, I think he's been a little bit too low.
I saw a really funny meme the other day. You want to hear about it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
It's an old lady.
Sure.
And it says, just turned 100, can't play with Legos anymore.
Because it has, what,
4 to 99.
Whatever
Yeah.
it is. Not bad.
Should we turn this into a meme podcast?
Yeah, 100%.
I'm
Maybe
in
we'll
on
get
that.
more views on TikTok.
Let's go on to number 12, The Dirty Dozen. I had him at 11. You had him at number 21. I think maybe one of the most famous characters from the decade, and that is Dr. Evil from Austin Powers 1 and 2, 1997, 1999, played by Mike Myers.
I had a hard time rating him here, Goo. Originally, he was higher than 21. I just kept moving people past him because ultimately he sucks at being a villain. He's very memorable as a character,
so iconic,
but he's bad at being a villain. So I kept knocking him down a little
What's his
bit.
name?
Dr. Evil.
What does he have a doctorate in?
The evilness?
Yes.
What does he say in the movie? I don't even know. Yeah, and he gets 2 movies in the 90s, so that does prop him up a little bit. Listen, I'm not going to argue with him being 12. I love Dr. Evil.
Can you think back to 1999 and just Austin Powers stuff being everywhere?
Yeah. Even still, if you go into a costume store around Halloween, one of the most prominent costumes is an Austin Powers costume.
Also, one of my favorite jokes, and I think it's from Baby Driver, when they're dressed like Michael Myers, and they meant the Halloween killer, obviously. And I think it was it Jamie Foxx who shows up with the
Oh, the Mike
yes.
Myers, Austin Powers masks. Yeah,
Mhm.
so good.
Which is also funny because he also dresses like Austin Powers in Django Unchained.
Ah, very true. Very
Yes.
true.
I think it's him that brings, or is he the one that gets mad at someone else for
I
having the
don't
Mike
recall.
Myers
I've
mask?
only seen the movie once. Good
Baby
movie.
Driver? I love Baby
Good
Driver.
movie. I think it's a little overrated, to be honest
I
with you.
know the third act gets a little, let's just say that John hams it up. But this is not a
The
Baby
third
Driver
act
podcast.
lacks the fun that the first, 80 minutes has.
It feels a little sloppy.
A little bit. A
Mhm.
little bit.
What's today's topic? Number
Villains.
11
Villains.
on the countdown of the most villainous movie characters from the 1990s is Cal Hockley from Titanic. And this is he's not out there doing bad things. He's just an extremely selfish. He doesn't care what happens to anyone else on the boat that is sinking. Billy Zane is the perfect face for this. He pretends to have a child to get on a rowboat.
Billy
It's awesome.
Zane
Yeah.
in Titanic as Cal Hockley is one of the most punchable characters of all time.
Yeah.
He's just smug. He's so smug, dude. You just want to fucking punch him. You want to kick him. You want to drop kick him off the side of the boat. He's so good at playing this character.
Let's go on to number 10, a top 10 Mac and Goo right here. And you had them at 7. I had them at 19. And I'll admit that's a little too high. I don't know why I had them this high. Really thinking about it right now. Should have
Too
been a
low,
little bit
you mean.
lower.
Too low.
How about you shut up? The wet/sticky bandits from Home Alone 1 and 2, Harry and Marv, played by Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern.
Yeah, I thought about just listing Marv and Daniel Stern because I would, if get James gun to my head, Sean gun to my balls, I'd pick him over Pesci as the better of the two villains, especially after Home Alone 2. But these are the villains that every kid knows from the 90s. You, at some point in your life, were scared by these two. And I think, like, the stories you hear about Daniel Stern not being able to, like, walk by children on the streets just plays up and plays into like the lore of it. They're just like, these were the villains of our childhood. I couldn't not put them in my top 10.
But you also mentioned, like, with Dr. Evil being so easy to defeat, these guys are also like
True.
that. They're paper mache villains.
It's a strong point.
They're paper tigers, if you will.
I have no rebuttal.
And also, and I don't know if you didn't put the other one on my on your list, but they were my number 2 villain from Home Alone.
You had them higher on your list, actually, than you had Wet Bandits.
No, I'm saying I had Uncle Frank.
Yeah, higher than
I had
Harry
Uncle
and Marv.
Frank. Yeah, as like
I see what
10.
you're saying. Yeah, you had Harry and Marv lower. Yeah, you had Uncle Frank higher. Listen, Uncle Frank's a son of a bitch. He's an asshole, bona fide asshole. I don't know if he's a villain though.
I mean, he could be the reason why he was left home alone. He's
I
one of
can
the
see Billy Zane's character becoming an Uncle Frank down the line.
What if we just built a ship of assholes? Who would you put on there? It'd be Billy Zane, Uncle Frank. What's his name from the other movie there? Private Ryan.
Oh, fucking what is his name?
Upham.
Jeremy Davies plays him from Saving
Upham.
Private Ryan. Corporal Upham. Yeah, there you go. Corporal Upham. He's, oh man. I don't know if a movie's ever made me as mad as that scene makes me. That's pretty fucking maddening. Still to this day, every time I watch it.
Let's go on to number 9 on the list. I had him at 15. You had him at 10. And that is Shooter McGavin from Happy Gilmore 1996, played by Christopher McDonald.
Yeah, really taking on a new life here in the social media age, too, because Shooter is very memeable. Christopher McDonald has been pretty funny on Twitter over the years. Shooter McGavin is an all-time great sports villain. Obviously, it's not as high as some of the other villainous characters on the list, but if you're talking sports villains, it doesn't get better as like pompous asshole golfer.
And also, it was just a common thing in Sandler's early movies that the villain was just so over the top, and this might have been the top of those tops.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's go on to number 8. You had him at number 3. I had him at number 20. And the only reason why I don't have him as high is it's kind of just like, it's not a plotting villain. He's a plotting villain, if you know what I mean. And that is the T-1000 from T2 Judgment Day, played by Robert Patrick, where, yes, he is this cyborg. He's a shapeshifter. Yeah, that's really cool, but he doesn't really have the evil that a lot of these other characters have.
I disagree. He's terrifying. Robert Patrick as a T-1000, the stoic face the whole
I
time.
agree that he's
The way
scary,
he runs is terrifying.
but it's not his plot. It's not his plan.
That doesn't mean as much when you're this terrifying. If you look terrifying, that puts you towards the top of my list. So he was in my, when I built this list, I had a definitive top 5. He was in it. Maybe I have him a spot or two too high at number 3. But man, the T-1000 scares the shit out of you, especially after coming off the first Terminator, where the T-800, I believe that's the model of Schwarzenegger, is such a badass, and he's almost no match for the T-1000, at least at the start of this movie. So it scares the fuck out of you.
Let's go on to a tie at 6.
Ooh.
Goose juicy 6-pack. Let's do Tony Perkis first from Heavyweights 1995, played by Ben Stiller. You had it 8. I had it 10. Last week we had White, blank on his name right now,
White
from
Goodman at
Dodgeball.
9,
White Goodman, 9 or 10, wherever he was. We even said last week we prefer Tony Perkis over this.
For sure.
And like, this is, you can tell when you watch Dodgeball that he's doing this turned up a little bit, and he didn't even need to turn it up. Like, Tony Perkis is not in a ton of this movie, but the scenes that he is in, he just steals them.
Yeah, and I think it hits harder too because he's working with, 10 to like 16-year-old boys, so he comes off more villainous than White Goodman does against adults who can defend themselves. And it's like every scene he's in is laugh out loud funny.
Yes.
Because he wants to be even bigger of a dickhead than he is, but he's trying to rein it in. Every scene is him mentally fighting with himself. And I think at the time I lost it, it might be the hardest I laugh currently from a scene from the 90s. All right, Gerald, whatever. Step on the scale. Step
off the scale. That's such a good line. There's so many common misconceptions about the human abdominals. Get out of here, you devil log.
It's so good. And like that movie was forever underrated. I don't know why it didn't do well when it came out. It obviously became a cult classic that I think we also prop him up because of that.
Nicholas, you want a Hershey kiss? Also tied at 6 is Scar from The Lion King. We each put him at number 9, voiced by Jeremy Irons. Wonderfully voiced by Jeremy Irons. I believe this is the top animated villain on the list, top of the 90s for Disney. And it's Shakespearean. It's dark. It's kind of Nazi-ish. So really,
the imagery in this movie is incredible.
Yes.
Scar greater Nazi than Ray Fiennes.
I don't agree.
In Schindler's List. Be Prepared, all-time great Disney song. I think you and I both have it borderline top 5 or 6.
Yeah.
No one ever rates it that high, and I don't understand why. Jeremy Irons' voice just provides so much depth to a cartoon line. It's insane how good he is in this voice cast.
Oh, speaking of algorithms on Instagram, TikTok, I get told so many times that Jim Cummings is the voice of Scar's singing voice. I know.
Yeah, I don't know.
No, I know this. Guys, I get it. Stop telling me. Also,
Sure.
I also know that the lead singer from Wheatus is the one who sings the girl's part in Teenage Dirtbag.
Teenage Dirtbag. Yeah, that has been popping up all over the place.
Telling me. I know.
Sneaky, the best scenes with Scar. Obviously, when he's trying to be mean and menacing is great. His conversations with Zazu when he's being playful but still fucking dickhead is so good. I'm telling you, Jeremy Irons just, I don't know. Maybe that's a list for another day. I know we did voiceovers at some point. I don't know where Jeremy Irons finished on our list, but he better have been on the Mount Rushmore.
I think we did for every Disney movie, we picked one voiceover. And then we said, hey, at the end, what do you want to do? Well, I like Jeremy Irons. I think Robin Williams is cool. Let's go on to number 5. And this one, I was like, this might be the coolest on our list. And
it's
that
the sexiest,
is,
for sure.
Yes, Catherine Merchel How do you
Myrtle? Myrtle?
Myrtle? Yeah, whatever it
Sure.
is. It's from Cruel Intentions, played by Sarah Michelle Gellar. And look, she's just playing a game, and she's bored. She's trying like
She's so devious.
that's the thing about it is that like she has nothing to gain out of this.
She does a really good job at not actually doing anything herself, but almost inceptioning people and putting
Yes.
ideas, planting ideas in people's heads to get them to do mean shit. And of course, she gets an all-time great comeuppance at the end. I also had, we'll get to honorable mentions in a few. I had Sharon Stone from Basic Instinct on my list. These two were the easy, sexiest duo of 90s villains. But Sarah Michelle Gellar's is she hides it more. You know, Sharon Stone is more outright bad, outright villainous. Catherine Myrtle is nuanced in the way she's a real bad guy.
Then we go on to number 4. We are at a Mount Rushmore.
Ooh.
The quiet, crazed killer of John Doe from C7N, played by Kevin Spacey.
Yeah, Kevin Spacey is John Doe. I honestly at 5, I probably had him too low. You had him third. I think why I bumped him down in the moment is because a lot of his effectiveness is Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman playing off of him, but that doesn't really take away from how good he is as John Doe.
Right. I mean, just is the most iconic scene from the 90s that final scene from 7?
It's got to be, right? It's on the short list for sure. That's one of the first ones that people would think of.
What's in the box?
What's in the box?
I played the video of me playing Brad Pitt on the show one time, didn't I?
I mean, there's a whole defunct podcast based around that one line.
Oh, that's right. The Boxers. The
All right.
Boxers. At number 3, you had him at number 2. I had him at number 5, and that is Warden Norton from The Shawshank Redemption from 1992, played by Bob Gunton. And he's a real weasel.
Yeah, great description
Yeah.
of him, Goo. I really wanted to put him number 1. I had it. I had the bullet in the chamber for a little bit, but the 2 I have ahead of him, actually, no, I put him number 2. So I only put 1 ahead of him. I did justify him at 2. The 2 that are 1 and 2 on our list are definitely more iconic, but man, like Shawshank doesn't work as well as it does without Bob Gunton's portrayal of the warden. I don't know how the book is and how much of an asshole he is in the book, but fuck if this guy is not so good in this role. Like it, I don't even know how to describe him. He's
Snake in the grass.
every scene he's on the screen, every single scene. You're so mad. You're just mad. You can't deal with it.
Yeah, and I would say that out of all the characters on this list, he might be the most unique.
Maybe the most realistic too. Maybe that's why he's so high for me.
I think number 1 for us is pretty realistic, and that's why she's there.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, I had them top 2, so it makes sense.
Especially now, and we'll get to her in a second. Like, especially now with like, you know, super fans of all these pop culture things.
That's true. It does ring more true now, but I'd still say Ward's a little more realistic because he doesn't do a lot of it. He gets his
Okay.
cronies, his minions to do it.
At number 2, maybe the most iconic character from the decade, maybe of all time, if you really want to think about it. And that is Hannibal Lecter, Silence of the Lambs, 1991, played by Anthony Hopkins. About 20 minutes on the screen. He won an Oscar for it. It's just such an iconic role. This character, after being put on screen, they had to make sequels completely about him, television shows completely about him. They don't always touch how good this, actually, none of them have touched how good the first one was, but this is just such a good villainous character where even you're buying into, oh, he's helping us. He's helping us find this other bad guy. No.
So that's why I knocked him down a couple pegs, is because what he contributes in the movie, it's actually pretty good. They find fucking Buffalo Bill, and they wouldn't have found him without his help. Now, he does eat some faces, does do some pretty bad things.
Yeah.
Obviously iconic. And if you're just talking characters, take out the villain qualifier, he's probably number 1. But when you add that qualifier on there, I justified enough things to bump him down a couple spots. But Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter is all time.
And before we get to number 1 on the list, here is a long list of honorable mentions just to throw as many names at you as possible so that you don't go on social media, you don't go on the YouTube and be like, hey, you guys forgot about this name. I think we've got everyone covered. And if we don't have them here, they sucked.
I think I ended up with 14 that didn't make the list.
Mhm.
I had 17th Kathleen Trammell. I don't remember how they say it in the movie. That's Sharon Stone from Basic Instinct. It's also hard to rate her super high considering you go back to rewatch that movie for the one scene. So how bad could she really be? Although you could argue she got a lot of men hooked on masturbation, so maybe she is the most evil. 18th goo, I had General Francis Hummel from The Rock. Like I mentioned earlier, The Rock, criminally underrated. Ed Harris as his character is fucking awesome. I had Jafar from Aladdin, Jonathan Freeman, great job in the voiceover there. Just not nearly as high as some of the other animated ones. Eric Gordon from Billy Madison, played by Bradley Whitford. A great smarmy character, but a little lower in terms of Sandler movies. Darth Maul, goo, you didn't have on your list.
I did. I had him way, way further down.
Gotcha.
And yes, he is the coolest looking character.
Mm-hmm.
What does he really do?
You're right. I had him 25th. I didn't have him super high, but I had him on the list. Tony Todd as the Candyman goo. Downright terrifying.
I had him at like 50, something like that.
But also, because he's barely in the movie, it's hard to rank him super high.
Mm-hmm.
Rebecca Gayheart as Brenda Bates from Urban Legend. She's awesome in this. Absolutely awesome in that movie.
Yes.
I don't care for the movie, but she's great. Nicolas Cage as Castor Troy. I guess we had to mention. Do another Kevin Spacey role here from The Usual Suspects, Verbal. Now, it doesn't really hit you to the end, obviously. That's the whole thing with this movie, but he's an all-time great villain in that. This one, I thought you would have like fucking top 6 on your list, goo. Oswald Cobblepot, played by Danny DeVito from Batman Returns.
So I had him at like 50. I had everyone at 50. I had him at like 40 something, but I think that Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman is way better.
Sexier.
I don't know about that.
Oh,
just the pussy I'm looking for.
Goo, my final one, because I had to bump white people off the list from The Green Mile, was Jenny from Forrest Gump, played by Robin Wright. I almost put AIDS instead of her, but she might be the villain of that movie.
I think you can make the argument that her father is the villain, and then it's a trickle-down effect.
Strong argument. That's a strong argument.
Let's go to, by the way, I had most of those on my list too, but I had 100 on my list. So I'll let Matt claim those people. On my list, I had the Shredder, Hamato Yoshi from TMNT 1 and 2, played by James Saito. He got kids hooked on cigarettes. He was giving them all sorts of fun when they should be out learning books. Ghostface.
Remember the ice cream trucks peddling candy cigarettes to us when we were a kid?
Oh,
and we used to think they were cool. That was the dumbest. And it was just like chalk. They were gross.
And then you would blow it out.
You'd try to get some smoke off of them.
But then
stupidest thing ever.
Then you would just eat it.
Yeah, and it was fucking chalk. It wasn't even tasty.
Ghostface from Scream 2. Stu and Billy, those are my 2 favorites.
Mm-hmm.
The Phantasm from Mask of the Phantasm. The Joker from Mask of the Phantasm. I had both of those actually ahead of Oswald and Catwoman. Pat Healy from Something About Mary. He might be...
That's a
like
good one,
I have him and Gaston like neck and neck. Those are like the 2 perfect like weird alpha males.
Yes, yeah.
From the 90s that are the
bro villains.
Yes. So good. Gaston, Meredith Blake from The Parent Trap.
That's a very good one.
Yep. Claude Frollo. There we go. From The Hunchback of Notre Dame. We were talking before the podcast. I think he's worse than Jafar.
No, Jafar is worse. Jafar is definitely worse.
Scrooge from Muppet Christmas Carol.
Mm-hmm.
Vincenzo Cochati from True Romance. Oogie Boogie from Nightmare on Elm Street. Rasputin from Anastasia.
Oogie Boogie is not Nightmare on Elm Street.
Nightmare Before Christmas. I only wrote Nightmare. I'm trying to rattle through 100 names here. Get off my ass.
Rasputin.
Remember Anastasia? That's a crazy movie.
I actually don't. I don't remember the movie. Like, I know I've seen the movie. I don't remember a thing from the movie.
And then, so it's Rasputin. And then he has a little bat. I forget what the bat's name is, but he's voiced by Hank Azaria.
Hmm.
So Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Tyler Durden from Fight Club. Buddy Love from The
Is-
Nutty Professor.
Is Durden really a villain?
Those are two alter ego villains.
Yeah, true. I don't know if either's Buddy might be more of a villain than Tyler Durden is.
And then finally, Fat Bastard.
Get in my belly.
I'm gonna eat you. Get in my belly.
Those were really the ones that neither I had and Goo didn't have, or Goo had and I didn't have. But then we have some ones that actually almost made the list here, Goo.
Okay, so these are the real honorable mentions.
Real honorable mentions.
This list sucks. All right, we each had Colonel Nathan Jessup from A Few Good Men, Jack Nicholson, obviously the courtroom.
Probably should have made the list.
He probably should have, but there's too many names.
Mm.
Dorian Tyrell from The Mask, played by Peter Green.
Stunned you didn't have this one. Scared the shit out of me as a kid.
Sid from Toy Story.
Also surprised you didn't have that one.
I think he's not. He's just playing with his toys.
No, he's a fucking dickhead. Put that kid in the clink.
Let the boy be. Agatha Trunchbull. How did you not have her from Matilda?
I considered her. I did. She was
Like,
32.
What a horrible person. And
I
she's in
agree.
charge of children.
I had her 32, Goose. She was in consideration. By the way,
Yeah.
I just learned this today as I was looking this up. Sid was voiced by Eric Von Detten, who played Brink. That's an interesting thing.
You know what you should have said? I was today years old when I found this out.
Not going to say that. No, thank you.
Uncle Frank, I already mentioned that. And Buffalo Bill probably should have been on the list.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So Mac was fine with what he did. Okay, whatever.
No, you don't remember that movie for Buffalo Bill. The only thing you remember about Buffalo Bill is the tuck.
Yeah, that's him doing it, though.
Well, of course. Yeah.
Goodbye, horses. I'm crying over you.
Do you think, say you had someone that had never seen that movie and you were only allowed to show them that clip, do you think anyone would ever watch the movie?
How much of a lead up do you get?
You just get to say, but trust me, this is a great movie, but the only thing I could show you is this.
No, I don't think you sell it.
It's a tough sell.
That's a good podcast for another day. You have to recommend a great movie, but only show one scene. Can you recommend the movie? Done. Write it down.
Yeah, sure.
All right, let's go on to number 1 for the best movie villains of the 1990s. And it's coming in right at the start of the decade, right at 1990. And that is Misery. Annie Wilkes, played by Kathy Bates. Just this small town cabin girl.
Mm.
Very quiet, very non-assuming.
Goo, I think why this works so well, or why it's number 1 for me, is actually eerily similar to why Christoph Waltz was number 1 in the 2000s.
Flipping switches.
Yeah,
Flipping
the
switches.
wild swings from everything's fine to I'm a fucking psychopath, so I'm gonna giggle about that. Like the bipolarness is insane and done so well.
But not only that, what makes it so good, what helps her with this character is James Caan's non-reaction to any of it.
Yeah, and we're used to James Caan being the son of a bitch.
Yes.
And so this movie flipping it on its head, it was so good. And of course, if you want to talk about iconic scenes, what's in the box? The scene with the sledgehammer and the piece of wood, that is all-time cringeworthy. It's so hard to watch even now. Like, I have seen a lot of shit in my day job, and I still do not want to watch that scene.
Now, I don't know how you could do it, but I think remaking this into a modern day story is a possibility because of all of the people now that just have these insane loves of certain things, whether it be pop culture or reality show stars or something like that. Like, there's so many different avenues that you could go down with a character like this.
I know, but could anyone ever live up to Kathy Bates in that role? You know what I mean?
And
that would be really hard to do.
I'm not trying to compare us to these characters, but yes, we are that famous. But when a listener goes up to you and says and like references something from an episode from a podcast,
Mhm.
do you ever know what they're talking about?
Oh, I forget most of what I talk about the minute we stop recording.
Yeah, but like, so Kathy Bates in this movie just telling Khan things from his books word for word better than he
Oh,
knows
I see what you're
himself
doing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right,
is
right.
is just it's such a great character trait.
Yeah, it's so good. It's
Yeah.
so good. And then
Mhm.
her getting mad at certain decisions, like the movie's amazing. Like it's oddly, it is harder to watch because it's so like frightening is not the word, but eerie. It makes you more uneasy than Silence of the Lambs does. And Silence of the
Mhm.
Lambs is about a killer helping catch another killer. It's
Yeah.
fucking weird to think about.
All right, so since I have too many names on this list, I'm just going to give you the top 6
All
of
right.
the movie villains from the 1990s. Tony Perkis from Heavyweights, Scar from The Lion King, Catherine Myrtle, you guys tell us, from Cruel Intentions, Sarah Michelle Gellar, John Doe from Seven, Warden Norton from Shawshank Redemption, Hannibal Lecter from Silence of the Lambs, and at number 1 is Annie Wilkes from
Bang.
Misery. I think
Great
we fucking
list.
nailed it.
Great list.
Fucking nailed it.
Phenomenal list.
Let's get into Max.
And Max, that could be anything. It could be a boat. Hey, Mac, have you been on the internet recently?
I'm gonna file a lawsuit because they're just piggybacking off of my idea here, Gil.
And what was your idea?
My idea, of course, if the listener's not keen to what we're talking about here, a pocket pussy made out of a Pringles can. Cheap.
Hashtag Max Hacks.
You can throw a fucking sock in there, toss it out. Really, really easy to clean. And what does these motherfuckers do at AMC or whatever theater this is for Dune?
They have created a commemorative bucket. Commemorative. There we go. I'll pronounce all the syllables there.
Yeah.
Commemorative bucket where it is the sandworm teeth coming out of the top of
But
it,
they're
ribbed for
flexible.
your pleasure. Yep.
Yeah.
For you to stick whatever you want in the bucket to grab popcorn.
Yeah, this was a misstep on their part because they made the opening too small. So people naturally think men are going to fuck it. If they just made the hole the same width of the popcorn bucket, no one would ever think about this.
Well,
But
I'd still
because they
think about
made it, hand sized, ergo hog sized, it's the first thing everyone thought of was men fucking the popcorn basket.
Like imagine,
Bucket.
2 people going on their first date and the lady sitting there going, man, I hope he doesn't try and pull the popcorn trick on me where,
Right.
you put your hog in the bottom of the popcorn.
Classic.
But then she looks over and she goes, wait a second, he's just having sex with the popcorn.
Obviously, the old cock in the corn trick happened
Yeah.
at some point because someone created it. How would you pull that off in the theater? How do you
Butter
poke
is
the initial
lubricant.
hole?
You don't carry a pocket knife with you? People think I do, but then I go like this and it turns out to be a comb.
So you
Nice,
cut a
sorry.
little X in the bottom. Is that what you do and just
Yeah,
poke
then
up
you
through?
jam it up.
But you
Now-
have to fluff yourself up before you poke through.
I'm always fluffed.
Oh, I'm opposite. I'm a grower.
So we also said last episode was our first of Max Hacks, where the item was a Pringles can, and we each had to figure out what we would do to improve our life with it. Now, we said that we would bring the Pringle can next time with how we fashioned it. Do you have your Pringle can?
Of course I don't. I don't do homework.
Okay, well, I have mine right here. And I said that if you cut a hole in the top, you can make it a speaker. So let's check it out.
Yeah.
This
It's like
is it.
putting it in a cup.
So this is it without the Pringles can first.
Wait, what's Goose Juicy's six pack?
Okay,
good.
so this is it.
Yeah.
And now
Let me tell you.
Honestly, not a big change. Not a big change.
I don't think the can is big enough for my
I
big
think it
phone.
would be louder if you put the can in the phone on the top and played the sound out the side.
Like this.
Yeah. About the same.
It's the same.
Yeah. About the same.
Oh, looks like my hack sucks.
Yeah. I think you're better off fucking the can.
Looks like Mac won this round of Mac's hacks.
That's why I didn't do my homework.
You win by default. All right, Mac, where can the people find us?
You can find us on Twitter and on Instagram at Mac and Goo Podcast. Every other platform is Mac ampersand Goo. Mac Shift 7 Goo. That includes Facebook, Stitcher, TuneIn, Castbox, Spreaker, Google Play, iHeartRadio. We're on Spotify, but more importantly, we're on Apple Podcasts. Get on there, rate, review, subscribe, 5 stars. If you do that, we'll get you a free Mac and Goo t-shirt from the folks over at Watertown Sportswear. That's Watertown Sportswear, 34 Mount Auburn Street in Watertown, watertownsportswear.com, experts screen printing and embroidery.
tpublic.com.
Merch.
Keep on writing reviews. They, really brighten my day.
Yeah. And send us photos of your Pringles can too.
Oh yeah. Tell us who won.
You could probably accomplish both if we're being honest. I don't think you need that much can unless, some of us are real talented with the old meat stick.
You probably shouldn't do it with this flavor. This is flaming hot.
No, you don't want any of that. No. You ever this is I know you did because every person at some point did.
Icy hot?
Well, yeah, that was an experience as well. But
Yeah.
going on a slip and slide where someone had put dish soap on it.
No.
Worst. Yeah, you never got dish soap in the pee hole?
No.
Oh, stings like a motherfucker, Goo.
All right,
You
see
never
guys
went on a
later.
slip and slide with dish soap.
No.
Wow, you haven't lived. It
Apparently I
accelerates you
haven't.
very quickly. All right, I know what we're doing this summer.
Credit to me. I still have a pee hole. So
It didn't disintegrate my pee hole. In fact, it might have been good for me. Clean that sucker.
Tuesdays are goose days. I abuse kangaroos.
Bye.
Please flip the cassette over to side B to continue the adventure.